Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a moment that, well, it just stopped time, literally. August 6, 1945, 8:15 a.m. in Hiroshima.
Yeah, it's this incredible image. Our sources talk about how clocks just froze at that exact minute.
Clocks stopped, life stopped. What was called a green paradise one day became, well, hell the next, instantly.
And that frozen moment, that's really what we're digging into. How do we get there? It's this collision, isn't it? Geopolitics, this absolute refusal to bend, meeting head on with this massive leap in science.
Right. The core question is why? Why did this happen? And why Hiroshima specifically?
That's the mission for this deep dive, untangling those threads.
Okay, so let's unpack the immediate trigger. August 1945. The war is almost over, but Japan won't surrender unconditionally. That's the backdrop, right?
Exactly. It all crystallizes around the Potsdam Conference. That was July, running into early August 45. You've got the U.S., the U.K., the Soviet.
The big players.
Right, and they issue this ultimatum. Unconditional surrender. Stop supporting the Axis. That's it. Final offer.
And Japan's reaction? Not good, I gather.
No. The sources say the leadership, the prime minister especially, saw it as a profound insult. A big humiliation is the phrase used.
So not just disagreement, but actual offense taken.
Deep offense. And crucially, they didn't just reject it privately, they publicly ignored it. Ignored the deadline.
Which the U.S. then reads as what? A final no?
Pretty much a definitive refusal to play ball.
Yeah.
And that, for President Truman, became the justification. The green light for what he himself apparently called the worst decision in world history.
Wow. But there was more to Japan's stance than just politics, wasn't there? Something about the emperor.
Absolutely. Even with the threat of total destruction hanging over them, Emperor Hirohito was adamant. It wasn't just about military defeat. It was about preserving the symbols, the essence of the Japanese empire.
Meaning the emperor himself, his role.
Yes. He insisted they couldn't submit to foreign sovereignty that would diminish the emperor's position. That became the sticking point, a cultural line they wouldn't cross. It created this total deadlock.
So diplomacy fails. The political track is dead.
Completely.
Yeah.
And that's when the focus shifts dramatically, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From the talks at Potsdam to, well, to the weapon itself, the thing the Allies had been building in secret.
Yeah, this is where the science comes in, and it's fascinating. This wasn't dreamt up overnight in 45. The seed was planted way earlier.
Over a decade earlier, actually, back in 1934. A German scientist, Otto Hahn,
What did he find?
he figured out nuclear fission. Basically, you hit a heavy atom, like uranium, with a neutron, and it splits.
Okay.
And when it splits, it releases a tremendous amount of energy. Hahn realized straight away this could be used for power or for a weapon.
A German discovery, but it's the Americans who really run with it, militarily speaking.
Exactly. The whole push behind the Manhattan Project, the American effort, was driven by fear. The fear that Nazi Germany, with Hahn's discovery, might build a bomb first.
So it was a race against Hitler initially.
That was the initial motivation, absolutely. And it became this huge collaboration, what US, UK, Canada, throwing everything they had at it, which led to, the successful test, Trinity, out in the New Mexico desert.
Magordo, yeah. So they prove it works, the bomb is real, then the question becomes, where do we use it?
Instantly. The focus shifts to deployment and the target selection process. It was methodical, cold, even.
There was a specific meeting, right? May 11th, 1945.
That's the one. An American committee sits down, draws up a short list. Kyoto, Yokohama, Kokura, and Hiroshima.
Why Hiroshima? What made it stand out on that list?
The sources mention it was seen as the ideal target.
Ideal is a chilling word here, isn't it? But yeah, they had very specific criteria. It wasn't random. They were essentially setting up an experiment.
Okay, what were these criteria? It sounds like more than just find a big city.
Oh, much more. First, yes, it had to be a large urban area relatively untouched by previous bombing.
Right, so they could measure the new damage.
Precisely. Second, it needed significant military and industrial value. A depot, a port, factories, communication hubs. Standard military targets, you might say.
Okay, that makes sense in wartime logic, but then it does. Criterion 3 is where it gets disturbing. They specifically noted the construction in Hiroshima. Lots of wooden buildings.
Wooden buildings? Why did that matter?
Because wooden roofs and structures would help the fire spread. They calculated it would maximize the firestorm effect after the initial blast. Total destruction, not just blast damage.
They were factoring in architecture as an accelerant.
And the fourth criterion was about the geography. The hills.
The hills around Hiroshima.
Yes. They figured the surrounding hills would contain the explosion, bottle it up. create a sort of reverberation or echo effect.
Like an amphitheater for the blast.
Exactly. Concentrating the force, maximizing the destruction, and frankly, the cruelty right in the city center. It was all designed for maximum measurable impact.
So they needed a city that was big, important, hadn't been bombed much yet, built in a way that would burn easily, and surrounded by hills to contain the shockwave.
That's the grim checklist. Kyoto was considered but spared, largely for cultural reasons apparently, which left Hiroshima fitting those criteria almost perfectly. They needed, in their terms, virgin territory to see what this bomb truly did.
And that cold analysis led directly to August 6th.
3 months later, the operation was underway.
Let's talk about that morning. The Japanese actually detected planes coming in, didn't they? About an hour before.
They did. Radar picked up 3 American aircraft. But here's where a crucial misjudgment happened.
What was the mistake?
Well, only 3 planes. The Japanese command assumed it wasn't a major attack. Maybe reconnaissance, checking weather, something like that. Plus, they were over a residential area.
Not flying towards a specific military base.
Right. So the decision was made, don't intercept, save the fuel, save the ammunition for a bigger raid later. They were expecting perhaps more firebombing like Tokyo had suffered. They just didn't conceive
of what one plane could carry.
Exactly. They didn't anticipate a single bomb of that magnitude.
And that cleared the path for the Enola Gay. 8:15 a.m., little boy is dropped.
The uranium bomb, about 60 kilograms of uranium-235 inside, dropped from 600 meters up.
How long did it take to fall?
Just 57 seconds.
Yeah.
Impact. And the effects were, well, everything the planners had calculated and perhaps more.
The scale is just mind-boggling. Sources say the immediate blast zone was over 3,000 square meters wide.
Radius, yes. And the fires. They spread across 10 square kilometers. Over 70% of the city's buildings just obliterated instantly.
And the key detail here, unlike conventional bombing raids, there was no warning.
None whatsoever. The U.S. often dropped leaflets before major conventional raids, telling civilians to evacuate. But not for this. No warning about the nuclear weapon.
Leading to that catastrophic initial death toll, over 140,000 people.
At least. The immediate impact was immense.
You'd think that would be enough. That level of destruction, surely that triggers surrender.
You would think. But Japan still refused to capitulate unconditionally. The military leadership, especially, remained dug in.
Still holding out.
Yes. Which led the U.S. to, well, stick to the plan. The second strike was already in motion, intended to break that final resistance.
Just 3 days later, August 9th, Nagasaki.
Nagasaki. This time, the bomb was Fat Man, a plutonium core weapon. Slightly different delivery, 4 aircraft involved this time.
And the timing.
Dropped at 11:01 a.m. From a slightly lower altitude, 469 meters. Impact in 43 seconds.
Casualties there.
Estimated around 80,000 deaths in Nagasaki. Another city devastated.
Now, connecting this back, this is where the source material reveals something truly shocking about the U.S. plans. It wasn't just about these 2 bombs.
No, not at all. This is critical. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they weren't necessarily seen as the end game. They were potentially just the beginning.
What do you mean?
The sources lay out a schedule. The U.S. military had plans for continued nuclear attacks. A 3rd bomb was scheduled for use in the 3rd week of August.
So potentially just a week or so after Nagasaki.
Exactly. And it didn't stop there. 3 more bombs were planned for September and another 3 for October.
Wait, 3 plus 3, that's 6 more. Plus the 3rd one in August. 7 additional bombs.
7 additional nuclear bombs were in the pipeline, ready for deployment if Japan hadn't surrendered. It was a plan for sustained nuclear warfare against multiple cities.
That just changes the perspective entirely. That timeline was only stopped because Japan finally surrendered after Nagasaki.
It seems that way. The double shock, Hiroshima then Nagasaki, so quickly, finally pushed Emperor Hirohito to intervene decisively. He announced the surrender,
citing the need to protect his people from further destruction.
Yes, that was his stated reason. But remember that sticking point from earlier.
The emperor's status, did that come up again?
It absolutely did. Japan agreed to surrender, but with one crucial condition attached.
Which was?
That the emperor's position as the sovereign ruler, his authority, must not be challenged or abolished by the Allies.
And the Allies agreed to that?
Ultimately, yes. It was a major concession, allowing the emperor to remain, albeit as more of a symbolic figurehead, without real political power. But it preserved the institution.
So that condition allowed the surrender to happen.
It seems to have been the key to unlocking the final agreement.
And then the end of the war followed pretty quickly. Hirohito announced the surrender on August 15th.
And the formal documents of the official surrender ending the war in the Pacific were signed on September 2nd, 1945.
But the story doesn't end there, does it? The source material emphasizes the aftermath, the long-term effects.
Now, the suffering continued long after the papers were signed. Radiation, that was the invisible consequence. People who survived the blasts, the fires. Many died later from radiation sickness.
And the effects are still felt.
Studies indicate yes.
Yeah.
The environmental contamination, the genetic effects. Scientists are still tracking the long-term biological impact in those cities, even today, generations later.
So if we trace the whole arc, it starts with science in 34, meets political deadlock in 45, leads to this unprecedented weapon deployment that ends a global war, but unleashes something entirely new and terrifying.
And it's important to note, as the sources mention, that after this use, an international consensus did eventually emerge against using nuclear weapons in warfare again. A line was drawn, albeit after the fact.
A crucial decision for humanity, really.
Absolutely. But let's leave you, our listener, with a final thought, especially thinking about those other bombs.
The 7 that were planned?
Yes. Dropping the bombs clearly forced the end of the war. But knowing that 7 more were scheduled for the next 2 months, it raises a really difficult question, doesn't it?
About escalation?
About escalation, about limits. Once you've used such a weapon, once that threshold is crossed, what stops you from using it again and again? How close did we actually come to a much longer, much more devastating nuclear campaign?
Destroying potentially every major city left in Japan, it really makes you think about that gap. The gap between the political desire to end a conflict and the sheer, almost unimaginable power that science can unleash.
Capability versus restraint. It's a fundamental dilemma these events forced upon the world.
Something to definitely mull over. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
We hope it gave you some food for thought.
See you next time.